Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The September sun bathed the small town of River City with a soft, warm light. The leaves were beginning to turn red, and the air carried that unique back-to-school scent. In the schoolyard, groups of students chatted, laughed, and sized each other up. In the midst of this commotion, a figure stood out. Maya Johnson, 17, walked confidently but quietly. Her black hair was neatly tied back, and her deep brown eyes calmly observed her new surroundings. Despite her quiet appearance, Maya exuded an inner strength that no one would have guessed at first glance. Maya had just moved with her family to Riverside for her father's professional reasons. She knew that entering a new high school would be a challenge, especially as a black student in a city where diversity was rare. But she wasn't one to be intimidated. Her passion, boxing, a sport she'd practiced since childhood, had taught her discipline, control, and courage. These qualities were now her silent weapons. As she walked through the school gates, she felt a few curious glances turn her way. Some whispered, others stared, but Maya didn't mind. She had learned to move forward despite judgment and prejudice. What no one knew yet was that Maya Johnson wasn't just another new student, she was a force to be reckoned with, and those who dared to challenge her would soon find out. Maya's first day at Riverside High School seemed to be proceeding normally, but the atmosphere changed as soon as she entered the main hall. The corridors were filled with students hurrying, laughter booming, and lockers intermittently slamming. Maya walked calmly, holding her bag to her, observing every detail, every face. It was then that she attracted the attention of three students well known for their arrogance: Tyler Brooks, tall and burly, with a mocking smile that never left his face; Jake Henderson, the second of the gang, always ready to follow Tyler's provocations; and Chad Miller, the smallest but the most sneaky, the one who loved to humiliate the new ones. They exchanged a knowing look and decided to test the newcomer. Tyler stepped forward first, his voice thick with sarcasm. "Hey, you, new. Where are you from, exactly?" Maya looked up calmly, showing no fear. "I just moved here with my family," she replied politely. Jake snickered. "Yeah, we can see that. Do you really think you're going to survive out here, all alone?" Chad added mockingly, "And look at the way she dresses. She looks like she came from another century." Maya gave a small smile, but didn't respond to the insults. Her restraint further irritated the three boys. They weren't used to someone ignoring them or remaining calm in the face of their provocations. In the courtyard, Tyler lightly nudged Maya's bag, hoping to provoke a reaction. The students passing by began to whisper, intrigued by the scene. Maya straightened, her clear, determined gaze fixed on Tyler. She didn't take a step back. For the first time, Tyler felt a flicker of defiance. This wasn't just another student, and it was about to be confirmed. Lunch break was in full swing. Students were scattering around the courtyard, some playing basketball, others chatting in small groups. Maya, tray in hand, looked for a quiet place to sit. She spotted a secluded bench under an old oak tree and sat down, hoping to escape the hustle and bustle. But Tyler, Jake, and Chad weren't about to leave her alone. They looked determined, their footsteps echoing heavily on the pavement, drawing the attention of the surrounding students. Tyler approached Maya with a smirk. "So, new girl, ready to show yourself?" he asked in a provocative voice. Maya put down her tray, crossed her legs and replied calmly. "I'm not looking for trouble." Chad snickered. "Ah, but the problem always comes to you, believe me." Tyler took another step forward and lightly shoved Maya. This time, the intention was clear, to provoke her physically. Students began to gather around them, drawn by the rising tension. You could almost feel the air vibrating with excitement and curiosity. Maya took a deep breath, remaining calm. She'd learned how to handle this kind of situation through boxing. Most people expect a girl to back away or panic, not her. Her gaze hardened, and her posture betrayed a confidence Tyler hadn't anticipated. Tyler, believing he had his strength overpowering her, made a sudden move to push her away. But Maya dodged with surprising fluidity, her hand gently pushing Tyler's away, slightly unbalancing him. The spectators began to murmur, surprised by her reaction. "What?" Tyler stammered, shocked. "It's just nothing," Maya replied calmly, a small smile on her lips. But that smile hid a truth no one in the yard had yet imagined. Maya wasn't just capable of defending herself, she could control the situation with near-perfect precision. Tyler and his friends were about to discover that they had underestimated their new classmate. The atmosphere in the courtyard was electric. The students formed a circle around Maya and Tyler, waiting to see how the situation would unfold. Tyler, still upset by Maya's ease in dodging his gesture, stood up, clenching his fists. "Well, I think it's time to show you that you can't just stand there and smile," he said menacingly. Jake and Chad exchanged a worried look but remained silent, letting Tyler lead the confrontation. The other students held their breath. Tyler took a step forward and tried to push Maya with all his might. But she didn't back down. Her boxing training since childhood had developed her speed, flexibility, and ability to anticipate her opponent's movements. In one fluid movement, Maya dodged the thrust and gently grabbed Tyler's arm. With a small, precise motion, she knocked him off balance, causing him to stagger and lose his balance. Tyler toppled backward and hit the ground with a thud, as the onlookers watched in shock. A heavy silence fell over the courtyard. No one had ever seen Tyler so humiliated. The students murmured among themselves in disbelief. Maya straightened calmly, without raising her voice, and crossed her arms. "I have nothing against you. But I will never be intimidated," she said with a calmness that disconcerted Tyler even more. That's when some people started whispering, "She's a boxer." The news spread like wildfire. Tyler and his friends were shocked to discover that Maya was no ordinary student, but a disciplined and trained fighter. Tyler slowly stood up, his cheeks flushed with shame and frustration. Maya, however, remained calm, aware that this confrontation had just laid the foundation for her respect at the school. The silence in the courtyard was almost suffocating. The students who had witnessed the incident didn't know where to look. Tyler sat on the ground, rubbing his leg and glaring at Maya, unable to believe what had just happened. Jake and Chad stood frozen, their mouths hanging open, helpless in the face of the girl's control. Maya stood there, crossing her arms calmly. Her gaze showed neither anger nor arrogance, only a quiet confidence that commanded respect. The murmurs among the students were beginning to turn into exclamations. "She's amazing. Did you see that? It's not possible, she just knocked him off balance like it was nothing." Tyler stood up with a groan, his hands shaking. This isn't over." But no one seemed ready to take him seriously. The other students had already figured out, Maya wasn't someone who could be easily intimidated. At this time, the headmaster, Mr. Harrington, came running, alerted by the commotion. The students moved aside to let him pass. He looked at the scene, the three thugs and Maya, and frowned. "What's going on here?" he asked firmly. Maya explained calmly, "They tried to provoke me physically. I was just defending myself." The principal, impressed by Maya's calm and controlled manner, nodded. "Very well. No one should be humiliated or put in danger. Tyler, Jake, Chad, you will face consequences for your behavior." Tyler and his friends hung their heads in embarrassment, while the other students watched in awe and astonishment. It was official, Maya Johnson had just made it clear to the entire school that she was not an easy target. That day, Maya's reputation changed forever. She was no longer just the quiet new student, she was now the one who was respected, the one who was looked upon with admiration and a little fear. By the next morning, news of the incident had spread throughout Riverside High School like wildfire. The students who hadn't witnessed the scene in the courtyard had already heard the whispers and exaggerated stories of those who had seen it all. Maya, upon entering the hall, immediately felt the eyes fixed on her. Some whispered among themselves, others stared at her with a mixture of curiosity and respect. In the classroom, the math teacher, Madame Parker, gave her an approving smile. "I believe some have already heard of your talent," she said with a wink. Maya smiled discreetly, simply replying, "It was only a matter of defending herself, madam." Tyler, Jake, and Chad had been summoned by the principal, Mr. Harrington. Their humiliation in front of the school and the teacher's intervention had left their mark. They were red-faced, nervous, and unable to meet their classmates' gaze. Even some of the students who had previously admired them were beginning to distance themselves from them. Maya, for her part, wasn't trying to humiliate anyone. She continued to walk the halls with calm and dignity, knowing that true strength lies in self-control. Gradually, some students came up to her to apologize or simply to congratulate her on her self-control. Among them, Samantha Lewis, a sporty and smiling student, approached. "Hi, my name is Samantha. I just wanted to tell you that was impressive, and that you have my respect." Maya replied with a sincere smile, "Thank you, that means a lot." That day, Maya realized that the consequences of this incident weren't just for Tyler and his gang, they had changed the perception of everyone around her. She had just gained something precious, respect and recognition off his comrades, not through intimidation or arrogance, but through the quiet strength of his determination and courage. The day had barely dawned when the corridors of Riverside High School were already filled with whispers and curious glances. Maya Johnson's reputation had grown. Everywhere she went, students whispered to each other. "Did you see what she did to Tyler? Is she really a boxer? No one should bother him." Even in the cafeteria, the excitement was palpable. The usually noisy tables fell silent for a moment as she entered, tray in hand. The students seemed intent on observing her every move, fascinated by this young girl who had dared to stand up for herself against the school's most notorious bullies. Some, intrigued, tentatively approached her. Samantha Lewis, who had grown closer to Maya since the first incident, sat down next to her. "People are talking about you everywhere," she said with a knowing smile. "I think you just changed the dynamic of the school." Maya shrugged modestly. "That's not what I wanted. I just wanted it to stop." But despite her humility, the students were beginning to admire her strength and self-control. Even some boys who had previously ignored or underestimated Maya now approached her with caution and respect. Tyler, meanwhile, had become more distant. The shame and humiliation of the previous day haunted him. He no longer knew how to confront Maya without losing even more credibility in front of his friends and the other students. Jake and Chad, on the other hand, remained silent and avoided the others' gaze, feeling that their reputations had also been affected. The news had even spread to her teachers. Some looked at her differently, impressed by her maturity and composure. Maya was beginning to understand that sometimes a single act of courage could transform the way others perceived you, and that this silent strength could open unexpected doors for her. That day, Maya realized she was no longer just the new student, she had become a respected presence, a figure who inspired both admiration and caution in the minds of those around her. A few days after the incident, life at the school was beginning to return to normal, but Maya's impact on the school was still being felt. Tyler, Jake, and Chad seemed to be reducing their arrogance, watching Maya from a distance, unsure how they could regain some semblance of credibility. Chad, the smallest but often the most cunning, was the first to tentatively approach Maya in the hallway. "Look. I wanted to apologize for what happened," he stammered, avoiding her gaze. Maya looked at him calmly and nodded slightly. "Thank you, noted. I have no interest in fighting with someone who admits their mistakes." Jake, less sure of himself, stepped forward next. "Yeah, me too. I'm sorry." Tyler was overwhelmed. Maya answered them with the same calmness, "It is important to learn from your mistakes. Don't do it again." As for Tyler, the confrontation was more difficult. Shame and frustration were still evident in his eyes. But after a moment of silence, he nodded. "Okay. I understand." Maya said nothing more, but the mere fact that he had acknowledged her behavior was a turning point. During this time, Samantha Lewis, who had already shown interest in Maya, sat next to her during lunch. "You know, a lot of people are impressed by you," she said with a knowing smile. "And I think we could be good friends." Maya smiled genuinely. I'd be happy to. It's nice to have someone I can count on here. That day marked the beginning of a shift. Maya was beginning to make true allies, classmates who respected her strength and dignity. The attempts at reconciliation by the students who had provoked her weren't just excuses, they showed that respect can be born even where there was bullying. From that moment on, Maya felt she could focus not only on self-defense, but also on building meaningful relationships in this new environment. Fear and insecurity had been replaced by respect and trust, both for herself and those around her. A few weeks had passed since the first incident. Maya had settled into her routine at school, surrounded by friends like Samantha and a few other students who had learned to respect her. The young boxer's reputation had solidified, and even those who had previously tried to bully her kept their distance. Yet Tyler hadn't fully digested his defeat. He'd ruminated on his humiliation, and the desire to prove he was still the boss of the school hadn't left him. One afternoon, as Maya was crossing the courtyard, Tyler appeared with Jake and Chad behind him. His gaze was hard, but Maya immediately sensed that he wasn't ready to start over. "So, new girl, you think everyone's going to keep respecting you for nothing?" Tyler said arrogantly, trying to provoke an incident. Maya stopped and looked at him calmly, placing a hand on her bag. "I didn't seek respect. I just learned to stand up for myself. And I'm not going to start fighting needlessly again." Tyler took a step forward, but this time he was more cautious. He made a sudden push, thinking he might surprise her. But Maya dodged with impressive fluidity, using her training to control the situation without hurting anyone. She guided him slightly to the side, effortlessly knocking him off balance. Tyler stepped back, shocked by her control and precision. The spectators around the courtyard watched, mouths agape. Even Jake and Chad began to realize that they could never intimidate Maya. You're truly amazing," Chad murmured, unable to hide his admiration. Tyler, humiliated but this time aware of the limits of his provocation, stepped back and said in a low voice, "Okay, you win, again." Maya nodded calmly. "I didn't win. No one wins when they try to fight for nothing." This moment marked the end of all attempts at intimidation against her. Maya had shown that she could defend herself with skill and composure, and that she wasn't trying to humiliate others, but simply to protect herself. Her reputation at school reached its peak, respected, admired, and now untouchable by bullies. In the following weeks, the reputation of Maya Johnson extended far beyond the schoolyard. Her calm, strength, and poise impressed not only the students, but also the teachers. Even those who had never seen her before remembered the stories told in the hallways, amplified by admiration and curiosity. Maya was no longer just the new kid, she had become a respected and inspiring figure. Students approached her to talk about boxing, ask for advice, or simply to exchange a few words. Some girls, in particular, were fascinated by her discipline and ability to remain calm under pressure. Samantha Lewis became her closest ally. Together, they discussed training, school, and personal projects. "You know, Maya," Samantha said one day during lunch, "you've really changed the atmosphere around here. People respect you for who you are, not who they thought you were." Maya smiled. "I never tried to change anything. But I believe that when you stand up straight and act honestly, others eventually notice." Even Tyler, Jake, and Chad eventually came to terms with the situation. They no longer tried to intimidate her, instead, they had begun to view her with a mixture of caution and respect. Tyler, in particular, seemed to reflect on his actions and the humility Maya had inspired in him. Over time, Maya also became a role model for some younger students, who admired her courage and discipline. Teachers began to cite her as an example of composure and self-control, and several students approached her asking to share her techniques for concentration and self-control, not just for boxing, but for everyday life. Thus, Maya Johnson gradually transformed the image of the school, where previously intimidation and prejudice had reigned, respect, discipline, and admiration now took over. And she, quietly but firmly, continued to move forward, aware that her strength lay not only in her fists, but in her ability to remain in control of herself and to inspire others. The school year was coming to an end, and Riverside High School was no longer quite the same. Maya Johnson had left an indelible mark on the halls and on the minds of her classmates. The shy and reserved new student from the beginning of the year had become a respected figure, admired for her courage, discipline, and self-control. Every day, Maya walked the halls with confidence, greeting friends and smiling at students who had once ignored or underestimated her. Samantha Lewis was always by her side, and together they had created a small circle of students who appreciated Maya's determination and calm demeanor. The former bullies, Tyler, Jake, and Chad, were now more cautious and thoughtful. Tyler, in particular, seemed to have changed. He had learned humility and respect from Maya. He now greeted her with a simple nod, without arrogance or provocation. Maya continued to train as a boxer, aware that her physical and mental strength came as much from her discipline as from her technique. But she knew that what truly made her strong was her ability to remain calm and inspire others. Students came to her for advice on training, focus, or simply how to face life's challenges. At the end of the year, during a school ceremony, the principal M. Harrington gave a speech about courage and perseverance. He mentioned Maya without naming her, speaking of an example of quiet strength and respect that had changed the school. The students immediately understood that he was talking about her and gave him admiring glances. Maya, sitting discreetly among them, smiled inwardly. This year, Maya had learned something essential. True strength lies not in defeating others, but in self-control, courage, and the ability to inspire respect. She now knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them with determination and dignity. So, the new student who had arrived in September had transformed her life and the lives of those around her. Riverside High School was no longer just a school, it had become a place where courage and respect could triumph, and Maya Johnson was living proof of that.